Welcome to the Encouragement Engineering Podcast, where we combat the negativity that inundates our daily lives with a positive perspective and positive action. Today's guest is Scott Prendergast. Scott is a full-time inspirational speaker, podcaster, and mental health advocate. He is a graduate of Temple University from Philadelphia, and he speaks about the importance of acknowledging mental health in society and encourages techniques to overcome the everyday mental obstacles that hold us back in life. Scott travels across the country speaking to audiences ranging from high school students to adults while sharing his own story of hope and resilience in learning to overcome depression. Scott uses a practical approach of mindful strategies combined with a compassionate touch to help others validate their own feelings and work towards moving past them. So please welcome to the show, Scott Prendergast. Scott, thank you for taking the time today. I really appreciate it.
Awesome, Bob. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate being on. I'm excited to talk with you and just see where it takes us. And hopefully we can inspire some people along the way.
I think so. And let's talk about that, because I think it's important for people to know more about you and how your journey has been. So if you can, tell us how you got to where you are today.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So my journey is a little bit different than a lot of other people in this industry. For one, I'm 24, so I'm a lot younger than everybody else. But for me, it started when I was in early college, like freshman, sophomore year.
Okay.
And I was struggling really deeply with depression at that point. I'd struggled with it all through high school, first few years at college. And then I came to a point where it got so bad where I felt like I couldn't even get out of bed in the mornings. Not because I didn't want to, not because I was lazy, but because I physically and emotionally just didn't have it in me. I saw no hope, no reason whatsoever.
Right.
But then I asked myself, said, okay, wait, I have a choice to make right here, right now. This is a choice. This is a life choice. I can either stay in this and just let this depression kick me 6 ways from Sunday,
Right.
or I can do something about it. And I'm not saying it's going to go away. I'm not saying it's going to be cured right then and there like that, but I can make an attempt and I can do my best to pull myself through and get myself to a place where I can start to enjoy life a little bit. And it started slowly with me. I started doing a lot of writing. I would write for this website. I would just talk about what it's like going through the everyday mental obstacles that you and I all face.
Right.
And ultimately, after writing a lot, I got some recognition. And one thing led to another. And I got found by this organization who gave me the opportunity to speak to high school and college students all across the country. And I started doing that part-time, then it became full-time. And I still do that in addition to my own brand as well. So that kind of is what led me here today. And ultimately, my passion comes from knowing that so many people in this world are struggling in their lives, but they're afraid to tell people about it.
Yeah.
And they don't know what to do about it. And so many people tell me, Scott, I'm struggling. I have all these things going against me. That's just life. I'm like, yeah, that is life. But, living is suffering. Yes. But to truly survive, that's to find meaning in that suffering. And we can find meaning in that suffering. We can't always take it away, but we can find that pocket of peace. And that's kind of what my whole message is about.
And that's what I love, is that finding that meaning. It's, like you did, you found a meaning of, and you mentioned the word hope. And I think that's critical for people to understand. We're going to go through stuff in life. All of us are. And that hope is what carries us through. Franklin or Viktor Frankl, wrote about that when he survived the concentration camps in World War II. And that hope of what's coming in the future, the possibilities, is what drives people. And it keeps that in your heart. And that, like you said, that kind of got you to one step at a time, and then journaling. And that's another thing, writing things down, journaling. It shows such an insight of what you might be going through, so that you can see what's going on and direct yourself to take actions towards coming out of those scenarios. Did you find that to be a big help? And like you said, you talked about it giving you an opportunity. Did that give you some strength to continue to move forward, to realize, this is just part of me and who I am?
Of course. Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Very insightful, Bob. So for me, that did give me the strength. I felt like for the longest time I had nothing. And I convinced myself up here, Scott, you are nothing, you have no purpose. And as we know, when you're saying stuff like that, you're going to see it, because what we think up here is going to become our reality.
Yeah.
So what happened with me is when I started writing, it was a small thing, right? But at least I had something. And to me, it was now everything. And I kind of felt like this at the end of the day. I would always journal at night, because for whatever reason, that's just when my juices were flowing a little bit more. And during the day, I felt so heavy all the time, as if I had been weighed down by all this water or something like that. Imagine kind of being in a pool and having weights on you, and you're not drowning, but like you're really struggling to keep going, right? But then when I would write these feelings down, I felt like it just got everything
Right.
off. And when I went to bed that night, I felt like I was ready for a fresh start. And usually the next day we had a lot of other problems, but then every night I was starting fresh. And that sounds weird, right? A lot of people are like, don't you mean you're starting fresh in the morning, Scott? Well, yes, but for me, it was at night, kind of
Right.
unpacking my day and getting through those difficulties and getting them on paper so I could start that next morning with a new perspective.
And that's good too, that perspective, that idea that yeah, we're going to go through stuff and we've got to unload that. We can't keep carrying that extra baggage weight around with us. We don't need it. And that's what people, they want to hang on to everything. It's like you become a hoarder of your own emotions.
Ooh,
And
I like that.
I hate that. It's like, let it go. We can't carry that stuff around. Give it to God. You know,
Yeah.
um, I see the cross behind you. Does your faith play a strong role in this and growing through this?
Oh, absolutely 100%. My faith is the reason that I'm here today, and it's the reason that I do this. Now,
Yeah.
I didn't feel that being a preacher was my calling. I didn't
Right.
feel that call from God. I felt a call to help people in another way. But
Right.
everything that I talk about and everything that I do is really inspired by what Jesus was able to do.
Right.
Obviously, I'm not taking credit for the Bible. No way, not at all. I understand the difference here. But I look at the gospel and I look at how it's changed my life. And I look at the concepts and how I can help other people too, who maybe are don't want to hear about it. But yet, if I could plant a little seed about a concept, then they're going to be like, hey, wait a minute. That Jesus guy, he said that. And then
Yeah.
that brings them closer to God. And then that's just the way that I think I'm able to do it as well. But I would not be here without my faith. It is super important to me. I always rep a cross in the background, on my neck, always just because I wouldn't be here today without it. So it's a huge central part of my life.
And do you think, that's a core piece of who you are and helps you get through it? It's interesting because the Bible talks about, stepping out and taking encouragement, and it says it so many times is to step out, follow that faith. It is hard. I mean, look what Jesus went through. We don't get beaten like that of our faith. I mean, we're not getting chastised by hundreds of people that crucify us. Sometimes it may feel like that, but we're with our limited knowledge, we're not going through that. So there's one piece that we're already a step ahead of the game. And we, like you said, that faith, that strength that we have that says, okay, he already went through that for us. Now if
Mhm.
we just follow that guidance, what a great concept. It gives you that hope. It gives you, maybe there is something to this. And that's the piece I love. It is, yeah, it's, you know he created the God created the world, and he gave us, he made our lives really practically simple. 10 commandments, that was it. There weren't suggestions, there was 10 of them, and there's commandments. And he said, do these. It's not complicated. We complicate it, you know.
That's the
Well,
point.
let me ask you this on the idea of depression, because it seems like there is more of that noticed in today's society. Do you find more people are, I guess, accepting and understanding that more to help more people through that?
That's a great question, Bob, and I would love to touch on this real quick. So there's a couple things here. I think it's wonderful how we're being open with our mental health. That is really important because when we keep these things inside, it's going to bottle up, bottle up, bottle up until we reach a crisis point. And we
Right.
don't want to reach a crisis point because that's going to take us down an area that we don't want to go. However, here's the thing. When it comes to depression, we need to be able to take the next step. The first step is acknowledging it and
Right.
being open about it. Great. But that next step is, okay, what do I do about it now? What
Right.
action do I take? And that's where, as a society, we're dropping the ball a little bit. We'll
Okay.
talk about it all day long, but we're not providing that action. And
Mm.
there's a lot of reasons that action, I could get into that all day about, resources aren't there, all that stuff, and it's true. But at the end of the day, we have to make a decision that
Right.
don't want to be in that place anymore. And we're
Right.
going to do whatever it takes to pull ourselves out of it, whether it's going to a therapist, whether it's talking to a parent, whether if it's just journaling, whatever it is, but we have to make that decision.
Yeah.
And so I think it's good that we're in a space where we can talk about that now, but we still have more work to do to help people to get through it and get to that other side, to find that peace and happiness that they're looking for in their life.
And do you think that, being in our society is, 1,500 stimulus a second or whatever it is, we're constantly bombarded with all kinds of stuff, and, commercials that tell you you're not good enough, and, oh, you'll be better when you buy this car or wear this cologne. Do you think that plays a big part in today's society, that, we're bombarded with all this stuff that can cause more of this feeling of inadequacies?
Absolutely. 100%. You hit the nail right on the head because look, if I'm just watching TV, I'm seeing commercials that's saying, you want to be like this, drive this car, buy this deodorant, ladies will love you. get this food and you'll like be a professional athlete. It never stops. So constantly we're being overstimulated with all this stuff. But then our subconscious mind is telling ourselves, oh man, I guess I'm not good enough if I don't have that. Or I guess I don't matter if I'm not like this. Or I guess I have to look like that in order to be considered valuable.
Right.
And this is so not true, but it's
Right.
being shoved down our throats all the time to the point where we consider that it is the truth, when in fact it's not. And so I think that does lead to it, because when we feel inadequate as people, that's really a foothold for depression to start kind of getting in up there and causing all kinds of havoc. So, and it's really a dangerous thing. I think social media and television and the broadcasting is awesome, and there's a lot of great things about it, like how we can meet and do this. But at the same time, you have to be careful with it. Because if you get too far in it, next thing you know, you're comparing yourself to everyone and everything, and you're looking back at the man or woman in the mirror, and you're saying, well, gee, I guess I'm nothing. Or, well, gee, I guess I'll never be like that. And we don't want to do that, because that's going to lead to a lot of things that are, like I said before, detrimental to our mental health.
Yeah, and it's a shame because, sorry, having an issue with my microphone here. There we go. That idea that we're not good enough is not something that our media needs to be portraying. And you need to, like you said, it's always interesting to me. Every newscast has that 5 minutes at the end for that good humor or a nice feeling story. No, give me the 45 minutes of nice feeling good stuff, and then give me the news clips. I mean, I can get the weather, in understand it in 3 minutes and understand all the stuff that's going on in a headline. I don't need to be inundated with the tragedy and this and that and the feeling and it's just, it's frustrating. So I tell people a lot of times we have the power to change that just by pressing that red button. Turn it off, read a book, journal, do something go outside.
Right.
Do you find it that I watch some of your videos and they're great. If you get a chance, check out Scott's videos on YouTube. I love the camera angle you're doing with the sky in the background. It's interesting because it's so open, it's blue, and it offers that outlook of openness and opportunity, if you will. I don't know if you realize you're doing that, but that's my interpretation of it. But you have a great message with those. How did you get into that? I mean, was it just a different format for you to get your message out with that?
Of course, yeah. So if I'm being 100% honest, I didn't, look that deep into it when I was doing the camera angle, but I do know what you mean, because I'm always just trying to make things different. And when I was doing the camera angles like that, I'm like, I don't know, this looks kind of cool. I can get into it. It's different.
Yeah.
But like overall, with my message and everything that I'm talking about, so my slogan for my personal brand is called "Navigating Life Through the Lens of Hope," and that's ultimately what I want to do, because we have a choice every single day on what we're going to focus on. We can't always control what happens to us. We can't control our circumstances. That's the unfortunate truth. We can't do that. However, what we can control is how we react to those circumstances, how we react to the cards that we're dealt. That is totally up to us. So we can choose to look through the lens of, this is horrible, I'll never get through this, my life is over. Or we can get out of that lens, pop a new one in there, and look through the lens of hope with whatever it is that we're going through, knowing that, hey, this is not fun, it's not good, but I will get through this, and something good will come from it. And that's what all my messages stem around, saying, hey, we're going to acknowledge times are hard. We're not just going to sugarcoat it and say they're not. No, they're really, really hard, getting harder by the day. But let's talk about how we can find a little peace in it, find that little pocket of peace, and use our emergency joys to pull us through to get to another day where things might be brighter.
Yeah. And it's a good point there that, we've got to be able to take that action, take those steps to get through it. As I was on another podcast with another guest, I thought the only way through it is through it. And that's true, is we're going to go through that stuff. I lost my mother when I was 6 years old to cancer. Didn't know, I was 6 years old. You don't understand why. I remember getting ready for her funeral and realizing the sun was still coming up, but she wasn't there. And it was that weird feeling like, and that's that first time you realize that the world is still going to continue. And we've got to continue on. We've got to be able to take that action. Did I learn from it? Sure. Not when I was 6. I figured out when I was older what this kind of meant. And, it takes time. I think that's a key thing too, is none of this is going to be instant. Like you said, it's a small step right off the bat, but it's something. How do you, I love the title of your podcast, that Lens of Hope, because it offers a suggestion for people. Hope is that key word. It's that opportunity. How have you been able to, you've talked to kids and other adults and so forth. How has that been received from the people? Because I think that's a great message to remind people of hope in any time we're in, no matter if it's pandemic now or if it's, in good times.
Absolutely. I think the message, it has been received super, super well. And I didn't go into it thinking like, oh, wow, this is the idea I'm going to do. So yeah, that'll really get the people going. I just went into it thinking, this is what I'm trying to do in my
Right.
life. So
Okay.
if you agree with it, that's great, but I'm just trying to do my thing. And I think that was really, something that made me excited, knowing that other people could connect with this. And every time I speak in front of a school or a community center or a conference, whatever it is, people feel things because I'm honest with what I went through. I don't sugarcoat it. I don't say, if you give me $29.95, I'll tell you the secret of how to overcome. No, get out of here. I'm going to talk about what it was like being in the darkest points of my life.
Right.
But I'm also going to tell you how I was able to get through it and that things got better and how you can do the same thing in your life too. Now, I may not know your situation, but I know the feeling of that pain. That pain is the same. It's different circumstances, but that feeling of pain and loss and emotional devastation, that's something we can all connect with. And I want to touch on that because I want to help every single person in this world, as many as I can, that's God willing is to let me to do, to help them to work through those feelings.
Right.
However they came into their life.
So you're like a guy at the gym that helps you work out. You're helping people work out. You're like that coach that says, come on, let's push it one more step. You look at it this way, and I think that's what's important for our people to remember is there's many angles. Like you said, you don't know everybody's situation, but there is a way you have that from here. You're coming from the heart. And that's what's so great is coming from the heart really allows you to connect to people because it's real. You've gone through it. You understand that pain. And how do you think that is? Do you think that people connect with that more?
Absolutely. I think people, as people, we don't say all the time what we feel. We always put on these fronts and these masks of, oh yeah, I agree with that. This is great. And just acting like, yeah, kumbaya. But at the end of the day, we're not stupid. We could tell when somebody's putting on a front and when somebody's being genuine and honest. And I think that when I speak, people could see that I'm being genuine because there's no, little like glaze ahead of it saying I'm trying to do this for money or I want to appeal to a certain audience. I'm just doing this and whoever connects with it, amen. And if you don't, that's fine too. And I think in life, if we have more people who just come from the heart, we're going to have less misunderstanding and we're going to be able to get more things accomplished because we're being direct. Now, that doesn't always mean everything that comes from the heart is going to be all good all the time. And that's where we got to distinguish between that. But I think it's that when you're upfront and when you're honest, people can see themselves in you. And when you can see yourself in somebody else, you're going to connect with them. And when you connect with them, you're more in tune to what they're saying. When you're more in tune with what they're saying, you're going to take something positive away from them. And that's ultimately something I always make sure I want to do every time I speak.
And that's great because it reminds me of what Zig Ziglar always used to say, you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want too. And that idea of just being genuine and helping people. One of the other things you touched on was the idea of, sometimes you say what you have to from the heart, and sometimes it comes across like a lead balloon. And I get it. But these are realities of life. Sometimes things hurt. Sometimes it's painful. It's going to take time to get through. There's no getting around that. But encouragement and positivity, it's not Pollyanna, is it?
Wait, what did you say? I didn't hear the last part.
No, I said encouragement and positivity, it's not Pollyanna, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's not 100%. And I think that's something that we as a society have got a little turned off by. I know personally, when I see people who are being I call it fake positive, it really bothers me. And I don't like it. And if anything, I find myself getting more upset and frustrated because of it. And that's why I think it's really important for us to just be direct with this stuff instead of, like you said, Pollyanna, just being upfront with it and just saying, hey, you know what? If I'm hiding something, somebody's not getting something away from getting what they need out of it. And I think it comes down to us being insecure as humans and thinking, oh, if I talk about this, somebody's going to think they're better than me. If they think they're better than me, then they'll have one up on me. And I think a lot of our issues stem from that. And what's one of the things I talk about in a lot of my stuff is how to build our own self-security and who we are, who God created us to be. Because there's a lot to be happy about instead of always comparing ourselves to other people and being insecure. So when you become secure with yourself, I truly believe that's when you can be the best help to everybody else.
And that's a great, great point there, because I talk about that myself, and in that idea that we have such innate power that was given to us by the creator of the world. Take that power and use it. And yeah, you may not know right now what that is. You may take time to find out what that is through journaling, through taking those small steps, through getting through the mud. You got to get out there and get your hands dirty. I know a lot of times, speaking to high school kids as well and college kids, that you talk to them, sometimes you're talking to them and you get the deer in the headlights look, and they're scared. And it's like, yeah, you have to take action, or you have to work to get through some of these things. And that's a 4-letter word that most people don't want to hear anymore. And it is what it is, but we all have to get through by working, by getting our hands dirty, by crying, by hurting, by feeling those feelings, understanding those, and moving out of those feelings, knowing that, okay, next day, you know what, wow, the sun's out, it's nice, enjoy that, step out into that sunshine, enjoy what's offered by the greenery around in our town, in our city, or watching a flower grow through the crack in the sidewalk, simple things like that. So the one thing, in case anybody's watching and notice Scott's got a little bit of energy, we can tell that. And I'd love to see him on stage, because I know myself, when people try to film me, they don't like it because I move around a lot. But that's okay. Do you think does your health have a lot to do with your energy level, or it's just the hope you have?
I think it's a little bit of both. I love taking care of myself in every aspect, mind, body, spirit, soul, everything. So I always have a lot of energy, I guess maybe based off of my diet and how I take care of myself. But I also do think that this is just the way that something was put in me to perform, in a way to really connect with people. Because I remember when I was in school, I always hated when I was in class and the professor just stood there like this and said, do this, do that, go over here, be this way. I was like, dude, this just put me to sleep. Come on.
Yeah.
And I think a big thing for me is a lot of times when I first started speaking, I would speak to a group of like 700 7th grade kids. Let me tell you, trying to keep their attention, that's a
challenge. 10 minutes. That's it.
So what I found that when I started to do, though, is that when I was moving around, when I was using my hands, when I was engaging, I was walking up and down the aisles, people were really listening to what I was saying, as opposed to if I was a statue just holding the mic like this, right, nobody could really relate to it. So people have told me, like, you got to stand still more. And I just can't do it. No. Because if I stand still, I'm not going to let what's inside me out fully. This is all part of the package of who Scott Prendergast is. It's just letting it out, letting it go, for better or for worse. So that's just me.
Amen, brother. Amen. I love that idea, because it does show, your energy and passion. That's what it shows, is that passion about your subject. And I think that's critical for people to understand that, because like you said, that's how they're going to connect to you. They see that passion and they're like, I want what he's got. How's he doing that? And that draws people closer to you. And that's a great reminder for people that, the health is a key piece of, who you are and what you do. Like you said, your diet. You can't do that if you're full of bad food, bad energy. You've got to get that out of you so you can move, so you can relate that energy to others. So great job with that. One thing I'm curious to see, we are talking about, the ability, or what's effects of depression and so forth more in our society, and we've got those steps we need to take. Are you seeing, because you talk to high school kids too, are you seeing them notice these characteristics earlier, or are they doing things earlier for the kids so that they don't have to be burdened? Like you said, in college, you figured this out. Okay, that's hard enough, and getting through college and all the stuff and the extra pressure. Are you seeing them, work towards skills for the younger students to get through some of the scenarios?
A little bit yes and no. So I'm seeing some great improvement from school districts. Certain school districts are doing a lot to talk about mental health. Get kids as young as maybe fourth, fifth grade talking about these things, so
Right.
that when maybe they do start to suffer from severe anxiety or depression, it's not a total whoa shock.
Right.
There's a foundation there. So I'm seeing a lot of encouraging things. However, at the same time, Bob, you know what I'm seeing a lot of here? I'm seeing a lot of kids are viewing it just as another thing from school and just that's just like math, whatever, just kind of wash over the head and not really pay attention to it. You probably should pay attention, Matt. I didn't too much, story for another time. But anyways, I'm starting to see that, unfortunately, to the point where people don't realize what's truly happening until they're in the midst of a crisis,
Right.
because they're being taught it in a way that they don't connect with it, or they don't believe it because they don't really truly know the actual symptoms. They just see it on the surface. So there are a lot of good things going on, a lot of good programs being created. But like I said, we still have so far to go to let people know that, hey, when you see this stuff, we got to get on it right away. We can't let it fester until we get to a crisis point. We got to get to a prevention area so that
Right.
we can say, hey, I'm identifying it, I'm acknowledging it, I'm seeking help, and now I'm going to work through the steps that I need to do that works for me to manage this in a proper way. That's ideally what I want everybody to get to. And I think we're on our way to that, but we're not there yet.
Yeah.
But definitely more encouraging signs, which is good.
That's good because not only with what we're going through now, getting out of this pandemic, people have been cooped up. They're, those feelings are right there, and they may be feeling these signs of depression. They may be feeling signs of angst, and those are, like you said, you've got to be aware of that. I think that's critically important of being aware. And what are some things that maybe people that think they're not quite sure whether they have it, or some give some action steps for some people to continue to, you know, not necessarily to get fully out of depression because that could be a clinical thing, but what are
Right.
some steps people can do so they can avoid some of those deep dark feelings?
Absolutely. And there's so many different things that we can do. And a lot of it's a lot simpler than we may think. And that's why I think it goes over people's heads sometimes because it's so simple. So one of the things that's really important, and I do this a lot and I've taught about this a lot, and some of the clinicians that I've worked with, told me about it. So I'm not just making it up. Throughout the day, three different times throughout the day, maybe once in the morning, once in the afternoon, once at night. Take 2 or 3 minutes to write down the feelings and emotions that have really been dominating your mind through that time period. So in the morning, maybe I'm writing down, hey, I felt sad all morning. I felt inferior all morning. Then maybe at night, it's, oh, I feel really happy. I feel whatever. But the fact is, when you're doing this, you're forcing yourself to pay attention to what's going on up here. And you're
Right.
not just letting any thought and any feeling that comes into your head completely take over and
Right.
take you way down south or way up north, right? You're staying more level headed. You're acknowledging it. And you're saying, hey, you know what? I'm planting a seed of that. So tomorrow morning, if I feel inferior again, I know I've got to do something about this. Maybe I need to talk to a counselor.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to talk to a parent. Maybe I need to talk to a friend so that I can, address that feeling a little bit more. And that's a really simple thing, but it truly works. And this is something that's taught in CBT classes, in therapy as well. And I think that's one of the most important things as a starter that we can all do to become mindful. There's that buzz term, right? Mindful of what's going on up here, rather than just being consumed and attacked by negative emotions and sad feelings.
Yeah. And like you said, it's a very simple one. It's something we can all do, and that's, it allows you to be aware of it, and not to mention, I think you'll start to see yourself writing things more. You'll see that
Yeah.
growth. I've done that with clients that I've coached, and it's, what is your ideal scenario that you want, and you physically write it out. Don't type it on a computer or text it. Write it out. Here's a pen, get a piece of paper, write it out, because the way you can learn that, you're writing it, you're seeing it, it's auditory, kinesthetic, all that type of learning. You adhere to it adheres in your mind more that way, because as you write and see it, it's like you're repeating it back to yourself too. So then you got three ways of learning it just right there by writing it down. And that's a great scenario. What's another one that people could do that's fairly easy to get those feelings of hope?
Yeah. So one of the things that I practice a lot, I think is really important, is every time that I start to recognize a negative emotion. So this would be kind of a building step off of the first one I talked about. So let's say I'm going throughout my day and I start saying to myself, Scott, you are so worthless. You don't matter. You can't do anything, right? Who do you think you are? What I do is at that moment, I imagine a huge stop sign just in my brain, just boom, just stop. And I picture it for 5 seconds. And then you know what I do? I ask myself, okay, Scott, why are you feeling this way? What is going on to make you feel this way? And what can you do to change this? And by asking myself that, first off, I'm taking my mind off the actual problem, because now my mind's saying, okay, so why am I thinking this? And then I start going deeper, thinking about that. Next thing I know, 10 minutes later, I'm not consumed by that negative emotion anymore, because I've pinpointed what happened and I started to identify and write down why. So what I do is, and this is all throughout the day, I could be driving my car and I'll start thinking horrible things, but I say stop. And I start asking myself why. And again, such a simple thing, but when we do this, we can kind of get to that genesis and that core issue that's really plaguing us. And the more that we do this, the more aware that we become, the less often that we're going to allow those thoughts to stick around up here. Because like I said, we can't always control what comes into our mind. However, we do have control about what we're going to allow to stay there and what we're going to focus on every day.
Yeah, don't let things rent space in your head, because the rent's not free and you don't need it there. No, and it's, I've talked to groups talking about that concept of all day we get inundated with negativity, and I'll take two glasses. One's filled with dirty water, and you get a pitcher of clean water, and you just start pouring into the other glass, and that's your positive notes, that's your encouragement, that's your positive things, your growth ideas, and eventually it starts to get all that dirty water and wash it out, and then you have a clean glass of water. It takes some time, but it's a possibility. Like you said, those are some ideas of things you can do with people that they can do themselves to get that mess out of their mind. We don't need it in our mind. We don't need that heavy weight weighing us down and telling us, like you said, you're inadequate or what's causing it. I think that's a great idea, because it helps you identify that cause. So great suggestions for people. Well, Scott, where can more people find out, more about you, your website? Tell us about your podcast too, because I know that's fairly new.
Of course, yeah. So I'll go through a couple things real quick so people can get in contact and see more about me and my story and what I do and the type of clients I take on at www.scottypinspiration.com. So that's my website. As far as social media, my biggest platform is Instagram. So my handle is ScottyP_inspo, INSPO. And then also YouTube as well, which is Scotty P Inspo. And those are all different videos. I post stuff all throughout the week, at least 3-4 times a week. And as far as also my podcast, which I just started doing a couple months ago, I do one episode a week. It's called the Lens of Hope podcast. And it's like a typical podcast. I keep it under about 15 minutes every time. But each time I take a different message and I just relate it to an experience that I've had or somebody's told me that they've had. And I talk about the deep, dark parts of it. And I talk about how you got through it. And then the other side, what that's like as well. And just taking that real stuff that we can all connect with and finding the lens of hope in that situation. Right. And so those are the best ways to contact me. Also on LinkedIn under Scott Prendergast, Facebook, Scott J. Prendergast as well. All those different ways. I'm always adhering to my phone. It's always by me, unfortunately, but it has to be. That's just how it is. Yeah. So I'm always ready to talk or take on a new client or a new speaking opportunity, whatever it is.
Well, Scott, thanks so much for sharing these tips, these tricks, the hope for people. I think that's important. That message of hope that you offer is a great message. Your energy level is right there, so you can give that full faith hope that people want to hear. And I love that. So I thank you so much for being a guest on the Encouragement Engineering podcast. I really appreciate your time today and the message. So keep up the great work.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me on, Bob. I really appreciate it. You're wonderful with what you do. I love this podcast, and you really have a lot of light shining through you as well, which I think people can connect with and really are attracted to and think that's a great thing. So you're going to be able to help a lot of people. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Scott. You have a good one.